The galactic archives floated in the darkness of space, a massive station that circled a neutron star. Inside its white halls, beings from 100 different worlds gathered around a single object. The object was a crystal, no larger than a human fist, but it glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Daewon stepped off the transport ship and stretched his tired legs. The journey from Earth had taken 3 weeks, even with the fastest engines humanity could build. His dark hair stuck up at odd angles, and his clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in the ship's narrow bunks. Beside him, Kyungmi carried 2 heavy cases of equipment. She was always more prepared than him, always more organized. "Do you think they really need us?" Daewon asked as they walked through the docking bay. "The Council has the best minds in the galaxy. What can 2 humans do that they cannot?" Kyungmi smiled. "Maybe nothing. But they asked for us specifically." The message said they were desperate. A tall insectoid being waited for them at the entrance to the main research hall. His body was covered in shimmering green armor, and his forearms moved in precise, calculated motions. This was Velthar, the lead archaeologist of the Galactic Council. His compound eyes studied the 2 humans with what might have been disappointment. "You are the linguistic experts from Earth?" Velthar's voice came through a translator device attached to his thorax. "I expected someone more impressive." Daewon shrugged. "We're what Earth has to offer. I study dead languages. Kyungmi digs up old things. Between us, we might be useful." Velthar made a clicking sound that the translator did not bother to interpret. He turned and led them deeper into the archives. The halls were filled with displays of ancient artifacts from civilizations that had died millions of years ago. Daewon stopped to look at a few, but Velthar kept walking, clearly impatient. They entered a large circular room. At the center, the crystal sat on a raised platform. Around it, dozens of beings worked at holographic displays, their faces twisted in concentration or frustration. Daewon recognized some of the species. There were crystalline AIs whose bodies reflected light in rainbow patterns. There were empaths whose skin changed color with their emotions. There were floating gas beings and solid rock beings and everything in between. "This is the predecessor artifact," Velthar announced. "We discovered it 6 months ago in the ruins of a dead world. The predecessors vanished 3 million years ago, but their technology is still far beyond ours. This crystal contains data, we are certain of that, but we cannot read it." A being made entirely of crystal approached them. Light moved through its body like water through glass. "I am Raxus," it said, its voice like wind chimes. "I have interfaced with the crystal directly. It contains a language, but no pattern I can recognize. No mathematical basis. No logical structure. It is as if the symbols were chosen at random." Kyungmi set down her equipment and approached the crystal. "May I?" Velthar gestured with one of his arms. "Please. 18 months of work have brought us nowhere. Perhaps fresh eyes will see something we missed." Kyungmi pulled out a portable scanner and began taking readings. Daewon walked slowly around the platform, studying the crystal from different angles. Symbols floated inside it, bright lines of light that shifted and moved. They did look random at first glance, but something about them tugged at his memory. "What do you know about the predecessors?" Daewon asked. An ancient being in the corner spoke. This was Praxis, one of the council elders. His species lived for thousands of years, and he had spent most of his life studying the predecessors. "Very little," Praxis admitted. "They left ruins on 300 worlds. They built structures that still function after millions of years. They had technology that manipulated space and time, but we do not know why they vanished. We do not know what they looked like. We do not even know what they called themselves." Daewon nodded slowly. He stepped closer to the crystal and stared at one particular symbol. It was a curved line with 3 dots above it. Something about it felt familiar, like a word on the tip of his tongue. "Have you tried speaking to it?" he asked. Raxus made a sound like breaking glass. "Speaking?" "The crystal is a data storage device. It does not have ears. But it responds to your touch," Daewon said. "Maybe it responds to sound too." Velthar clicked impatiently. "We have tried every known language in the galaxy. Nothing works." "Every known language," Daewon repeated. He reached out and touched the crystal. It was warm beneath his fingers. The symbols inside shifted, and for just a moment he saw a pattern. 3 dots. A curved line. It looked like something he had seen in old books back when he was studying ancient Earth languages in university. The symbol looked like Proto-Indo-European script, but that was impossible. Proto-Indo-European was a reconstructed language from Earth, spoken thousands of years ago by humans who never left their planet. How could aliens 3 million years dead know anything about it? Daewon cleared his throat. He felt foolish, but everyone was watching him now. He spoke a simple phrase in Proto-Indo-European, one of the first phrases students learned. It meant, "I seek knowledge." The crystal exploded with light. Everyone in the room jumped back. Alarms blared. Raxus shouted something about energy spikes, but Daewon stood frozen, his hand still on the crystal as symbols began to flow past his eyes. The symbols were changing, rearranging themselves into patterns he could almost read. Velthar rushed forward and pulled Daewon away from the crystal. "What did you do? What did you say?" Daewon's heart was pounding. "I spoke an old Earth language. A very old language. One that nobody has spoken in thousands of years." "And the crystal responded," Kyungmi said. Her voice was filled with wonder and fear. Why would a predecessor artifact respond to a human language? The crystal continued to pulse with light. The symbols inside it moved faster now, as if excited or awake after a long sleep. Daewon watched them flow past, and slowly, very slowly, he began to recognize patterns. Some symbols looked like ancient Sumerian. Others looked like Tamil. A few reminded him of Basque, one of the oldest languages still spoken on Earth. Praxis moved closer, his ancient eyes wide. This should not be possible. Humans evolved recently. The predecessors died millions of years before your species even existed. There is no connection. "But there is," Daewon whispered. He pointed at a symbol that looked like a word in Sanskrit. "Look at that. And that one. They're from Earth. From different times and different places, but they're from Earth." The room fell silent except for the soft humming of the crystal. Every being there understood what this meant, even if they did not want to believe it. The predecessors and humanity were connected somehow. Across millions of years and countless light years of space, something linked them together. Velthar's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. "We need to understand this connection. We need to know why the crystal responds to you." Daewon nodded, but his eyes never left the crystal. Inside it, more symbols appeared. These ones arranged themselves into something that looked like a sentence. He could not read it completely, but 2 words were clear. 2 words that made his blood run cold. The words were in ancient Sumerian, but their meaning was simple. "They come." The laboratory was cold and bright. Daewon sat in a comfortable chair while machines scanned his brain. Kyungmi stood nearby, watching the displays with worried eyes. It had been 3 days since the crystal first responded to his voice, and the Galactic Council wanted answers. "The scans show normal human brain activity," said a medical officer whose name Daewon could not pronounce. The being looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. "There is no evidence of mind control or external influence. He is simply reading the symbols." Velthar paced back and forth on his 4 legs. "But how?" "We have translation matrices that can decode any logical language. We have AIs that have studied linguistics for centuries. Yet this human, who arrived 3 days ago, can read what we cannot." A door opened and a human in military uniform entered. This was Jae-hyun, sent by Earth's government to observe the situation. He was tall and serious, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He nodded to Daewon and Kyungmi before turning to Velthar. "I hope my people are being treated well," Jae-hyun said. His voice was polite but firm. "They are safe," Velthar replied. "But we need to understand what is happening. This situation is unprecedented." Another being entered the room. She was humanoid in shape, but her skin shifted through different colors like oil on water. This was Nira, an empath who could sense emotions and truth. The council often called on her when they needed to know if someone was lying. Nira approached Daewon and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her skin turned a calm blue color. "He is confused and frightened," she said. "But he tells the truth. He does not know why the crystal responds to him." Daewon stood up, tired of being scanned and studied. "Can we try again? Maybe if I work with the crystal more, I can translate the full message." They returned to the main chamber. The crystal still sat on its platform, glowing softly. Over the past 3 days, Daewon had spent hours speaking to it in different ancient languages. Each time, the crystal responded. Each time, more symbols became clear. Kyungmi pulled up a holographic display showing all the symbols they had recorded. "Look at this pattern," she said. "These symbols match Proto-Indo-European roots. These match ancient Sumerian. These are similar to Tamil. And these remind me of Basque." All Earth languages, Jae-hyun observed, from different regions and different time periods. Not just Earth languages, Kyung-mi continued. Some of the symbols match languages from other worlds too. Dead languages that no one has spoken in thousands of years. Praxis joined them, moving slowly on his ancient legs. I have been researching our genetic databases, he said. Something interesting has appeared. Humans have trace genetic markers that match several extinct species. The markers are small, easy to miss. But they are there. What does that mean? Daewon asked. It means your species was not entirely natural, Praxis said carefully. Someone altered human evolution at some point in your distant past. Someone introduced genetic material from other species. The room fell silent. Jae-hyun's face remained calm, but his hands clenched into fists. The predecessors, he said. You are saying the predecessors experimented on humanity. Perhaps, Praxis replied. Or perhaps they did more than experiment. Perhaps they guided your evolution deliberately. Velthar made his clicking sound again, louder this time. This is speculation. We need facts. Daewon turned back to the crystal. Then let us get facts. Let me try to translate more of the message. He placed both hands on the crystal and began to speak. He mixed languages now, switching between Proto-Indo-European, Sumerian, Tamil, and others. The crystal responded to each one, its light growing brighter. Symbols flowed faster inside it, arranging themselves into sentences. Kyung-mi recorded everything, her equipment capturing each symbol as it appeared. I am seeing a pattern, she said excitedly. The language is not random. It is a hybrid. It combines elements from dozens of different languages, creating something new. Or something old, Daewon said. He was beginning to understand now. What if this is the original language? What if all our Earth languages came from this one? Impossible, Velthar said. Human languages evolved naturally over thousands of years. Did they? Praxis asked quietly. We know the predecessors seeded life on many worlds. We know they had the technology to manipulate genetics and evolution. What if they also seeded languages? What if they planted linguistic patterns in the species they created? Daewon felt dizzy. The implications were enormous. If the predecessors had influenced human evolution, then everything humanity thought about its own history was wrong. They were not unique. They were not special. They were created, designed, built for some purpose. The message, Nira said suddenly. What does it say? Daewon focused on the symbols. They were clearer now, easier to read. He spoke slowly, translating as he went. The silence comes. The devourers wake. We have contained them in the space between spaces, but the walls grow thin. Those who remember the old tongue must renew the seal or all will be consumed. Nobody spoke. The crystal continued to pulse with light and new symbols appeared. These ones formed a star map. Daewon recognized some of the stars. They were in a distant part of the galaxy, far from any settled world. Coordinates, Raxus said. The crystal is showing us a location. Kyung-mi was already analyzing the map. It is a system with 12 planets. According to our records, it has never been explored. There is no reason to go there. No resources, no life signs, nothing of value. Except answers, Jae-hyun said. If the predecessors left this message, they left it for a reason. We need to follow those coordinates. Velthar hesitated. This could be dangerous. We know nothing about this threat the message mentions. These devourers. We know they are contained, Praxis said. But the message says the containment is failing. If this is true, we need to know more. We need to understand what we are facing. Nira's skin shifted to a dark red color, the color of fear. I sense something, she said. The crystal is not just a message. It is a warning, and it is urgent. Daewon removed his hands from the crystal, suddenly exhausted. He had been standing for hours, speaking dead languages until his throat was sore. But he had learned something important. The predecessors had left this message for someone. They had encoded it in a language that only certain species could read. They left it for us, he said quietly. For humans. They knew we would be able to read it. But why? Kyung-mi asked. Why create a species millions of years in the future just to read a message? Maybe we are more than messengers, Jae-hyun said. Maybe we are the solution. Velthar made a decision. I will request permission from the council to mount an expedition. We will follow the coordinates and see what the predecessors left there. But this must be done carefully. We cannot risk starting a panic. Too late for that, Kyung-mi said. She was looking at her communication device. The news networks have picked up the story. They are calling it the human connection. There are already protests on some worlds. People are afraid of what this means. Daewon felt a knot form in his stomach. He had just wanted to study languages, to understand how people communicated across time and space. Now he was at the center of a galactic crisis. Now everyone was looking to humanity for answers they did not have. Praxis approached and placed a gentle hand on Daewon's shoulder. "The truth is often frightening," he said, "but it is better than ignorance. You have opened a door that has been closed for 3 million years. Now we must see what lies beyond it." The crystal pulsed one more time, bright and urgent. Inside it, 2 words appeared in ancient Sumerian. Daewon read them and felt cold spread through his body. 6 months. That was all the time they had. 6 months before the Devourers broke free. The ship cut through empty space toward the coordinates. It was called the Seeker, a research vessel designed for long journeys to unexplored systems. Sunhee commanded the ship with steady confidence. She had been a captain for 20 years, carrying scientists and explorers to the far edges of known space. Daewon stood on the bridge, watching the stars stretch past them. Beside him, Kyungmi studied her portable scanner. Behind them, Velthar and Raxus discussed the mission parameters. Jaehyun had insisted on coming too, along with Tovrim, a reptilian security chief whose scales were the color of rust. "We will arrive in 6 hours, Sunhee announced. "All systems are functioning normally." "Good," Velthar said. "I want full scans of the system before we approach any planet. We do not know what we will find." The journey had taken 2 weeks. During that time, the situation in the galaxy had grown worse. Anti-human protests spread across dozens of worlds. Some species called humans dangerous experiments that should be destroyed. Others said humans were the key to understanding the predecessors and should be protected. The Galactic Council tried to maintain order, but fear was spreading. Daewon tried not to think about it. He focused instead on the crystal they had brought with them. It sat in a secure container in the ship's laboratory. Even through the container's walls, he could feel it calling to him, urging him to speak. Another human joined them on the bridge. This was Dr. Huan, a biologist who specialized in ancient genetics. He had been studying the genetic markers Praxis discovered in human DNA. His findings troubled him. "I have completed my analysis," Huan said. "The genetic markers in humans match 7 different extinct species. The modifications are old, very old. They were introduced at least 50,000 years ago, possibly earlier." "What kind of modifications?" Kyungmi asked. "Linguistic ones," Huan replied. "The changes affect the parts of the brain that process language. Humans have more neural pathways for language processing than any other known species. We can learn languages faster, remember them better, and understand subtle patterns that other species miss." "We were designed to be translators," Daewon said quietly. "More than that," Huan continued. "The modifications also affect memory and pattern recognition. Humans are exceptionally good at seeing connections between different systems. It is why we are good at mathematics, music, and cryptography." Velthar's compound eyes studied Huan carefully. "So the predecessors created humans to be, what, universal translators?" "Perhaps," Huan said. "Or perhaps they created humans to preserve languages, to keep them alive even after the original speakers died." The ship's alarms chimed softly. Sunhee checked her displays. "We have arrived at the coordinates." Beginning system scan. The main view screen showed a solar system with 12 planets orbiting a yellow star. Most of the planets were gas giants or barren rocks, but the 4th planet from the star was different. It had an atmosphere, it had liquid water, and it had a single large moon. "The moon," Raxus said, its crystalline body reflecting the screen's light. "I am detecting artificial structures on the moon." "Large ones. Take us there," Velthar ordered. The Seeker descended toward the moon's surface. As they got closer, the structures became visible. They were enormous buildings carved from dark stone, covering an area the size of a small continent. In the center stood a tower that reached up into space. "This is incredible," Kyungmi breathed. "These structures are millions of years old, but they show no signs of decay." They landed near the base of the tower. Tovrim assembled a security team while Velthar prepared the research equipment. Daewon retrieved the crystal from its container. As soon as he touched it, symbols flashed through his mind. The crystal was excited, he realized. It recognized this place. The exploration team consisted of Daewon, Kyungmi, Velthar, Raxus, Huan, Jaehyun, and 4 security officers. They entered the tower through a massive doorway that opened at their approach. Inside, the walls glowed with soft light. The tower is still powered, Raxus observed. After 3 million years, it still functions. They walked through corridors lined with strange symbols. Daewon recognized some of them from the crystal. Others were new, from languages he had never seen. The tower was vast, with hundreds of levels spiraling upward. But they were drawn to the center where a great chamber waited. The chamber was circular and enormous. Its walls were covered entirely with crystals identical to the one Daewon carried. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, all glowing softly in the darkness. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal. By the ancestors, Velthar whispered. This is a library. A library of languages. Daewon approached the nearest crystal and touched it. Symbols flowed through his mind, but he could not read them. The language was alien, completely unfamiliar. He moved to another crystal and tried again. This time a few symbols made sense, then a few more. Each crystal contains a different language, he said. The predecessors preserved them here. Languages from species that died millions of years ago. Kyungmi was examining the crystals with her scanner. Most of these languages are completely unknown. But some are familiar. I am seeing patterns that match languages from Earth and other worlds. Juan pulled out a genetic analyzer and scanned several crystals. The crystals contain genetic information too. Each one is keyed to a specific species. You need the right genetic markers to unlock them. But humans can unlock many of them, Daewon said. He was moving from crystal to crystal now, touching each one. Some remained dark, but many responded to his touch, lighting up and showing him fragments of dead languages that should have been lost forever. This confirms my theory, Juan said excitedly. Humans were designed to be universal translators. The predecessors gave us genetic markers from multiple species so we could unlock their languages. Velthar approached a crystal and touched it. Nothing happened. He tried another, then another. All remained dark. I cannot read any of them, he said, frustration clear in his voice. Jae-hun was examining the pedestal in the center of the chamber. There is something here, an interface of some kind. They gathered around the pedestal. It had a depression in its center, perfectly sized for the crystal they had brought. Daewon placed the crystal carefully into the depression. Immediately, all the crystals in the chamber blazed with light. A hologram appeared above the pedestal. It showed the galaxy, but not as it was now. This was the galaxy 3 million years ago. Thousands of civilizations thrived across the stars, their territories marked in different colors, and in the center, in the oldest part of the galaxy, was the territory of the predecessors. This is their history, Raxus said. They are showing us what happened. The hologram changed, showing a great war. The predecessors fought against something that appeared as writhing shadows in space. The shadows consumed entire star systems, eating matter and energy without limit. These were the Devourers. The war lasted for centuries. The predecessors used weapons that bent space and time. They created artificial suns and destroyed planets. But the Devourers could not be killed. They existed partially outside normal space in dimensions humans could not perceive. Finally, the predecessors found a solution. They built a prison in the space between dimensions and trapped the Devourers inside. But the effort cost them everything. Their civilization collapsed. Their numbers dwindled, and they knew the prison would not last forever. So they created a plan. They seeded life across the galaxy, guiding the evolution of dozens of species. They taught these species language, gave them culture, helped them grow, and in one species, humanity, they placed something special. They placed the genetic keys to unlock all the languages they had preserved. The hologram showed humans evolving on Earth, completely unaware of their designed purpose. The predecessors watched from afar, knowing they would not live to see their plan complete. But they had faith that when the prison began to fail, when the Devourers began to wake, humanity would be ready. The hologram faded. Daewon stood in silence, trying to process what he had seen. Everything he thought about human history was a lie. Humans were not special because they evolved uniquely. They were special because they were built to be special. The prison is failing, Velthar said. The message said we have 6 months. What happens then? Daewon returned to the pedestal. The main crystal was still glowing and new symbols appeared inside it. He read them carefully, his heart sinking with each word. The prison can be renewed, he said, but only by someone who can speak the predecessor language perfectly. Someone who understands not just the words, but the concepts behind them. Can you do it? Jaehyun asked. I do not know, Daewon admitted. I can read fragments. I can understand pieces. But the complete language... He gestured at the thousands of crystals surrounding them. It would take years to learn all of this. We do not have years, Tovrim growled. We have months. Kyungmi placed a hand on Daewon's shoulder. Then we start now. We study these crystals. We learn what we can. And hope it is enough, Daewon finished. Earth had changed. Daewon stood in his small apartment in Seoul and watched the protest through his window. Thousands of people filled the streets, holding signs and shouting. Some signs supported him, calling him a hero. Others called him a genetic freak, a predecessor puppet. It had been 3 months since they found the library. 3 months of intense study, learning the predecessor language piece by piece. Daewon barely slept anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw symbols. Every dream was filled with words and languages that should not exist. Kyungmi knocked on his door. She looked as tired as he felt. The council wants another update. They want to know if you are ready. I am not ready, Daewon said. I have learned maybe 30% of the language, maybe 40 on a good day. It is not enough. It will have to be enough. We have 3 months left. They took a transport to the Galactic Council building. The building floated above the city, a massive structure of glass and steel. Inside, representatives from 200 species debated the crisis. The debates had grown heated in recent months. Some species wanted to eliminate humanity before they became too powerful. Others wanted to protect humans and learn from them. A few wanted to ignore the whole situation and hope it went away. Boram met them at the entrance. She was a diplomat, skilled at navigating the complicated politics of the council. Her face was calm, but Daewon could see the stress in her eyes. How bad is it? He asked. Bad, Boram replied. Commissioner Thelkas is pushing for human quarantine. He wants to isolate Earth until the crisis is resolved. He has support from several powerful species. They are afraid, Kyungmi said. They have reason to be, Boram admitted. Humans were designed by the predecessors. We have genetic modifications that other species do not have. Some people see that as an advantage we should not possess. They entered the council chamber. It was a vast room with seats arranged in tiers, rising up toward the ceiling. Hundreds of beings sat in those seats, representing their home worlds. At the center stood a speaking platform. Daewon, Kyungmi, and Boram walked to that platform. Commissioner Thelkas spoke first. He was a being whose body flowed like liquid metal, constantly shifting shape. 3 months remain until the prison fails, he said. The human claims he can renew the seal. But we have only his word for this. We have no proof. No guarantee. I have been studying every day, Daewon said. I have learned more of the predecessor language than anyone else. If there is a chance to stop the devourers, I will take it. But you admit you have not mastered the language, Thelkas said. You admit you are not ready. Why should we trust the fate of the galaxy to you? Before Daewon could answer, another voice spoke. It was Young-Soo, a human historian who had spent 40 years studying predecessor sites. He was old now, his hair white and his movement slow, but his mind was sharp. Because he is our best chance, Young-Soo said. I have studied the predecessors longer than anyone here. I have visited their ruins on 50 worlds, and I have learned something important. The predecessors did not make mistakes. He walked slowly to the platform, leaning on a cane. They knew the prison would fail eventually. They knew the devourers would try to escape. So they created humanity as a solution. They gave us the ability to learn languages quickly, to understand complex patterns, to adapt to situations other species cannot handle. They made us exactly what we needed to be. Or they made you into weapons, Thelkas said. Weapons that might turn against us. We are not weapons, Boram said firmly. We are people, complicated, flawed people who are trying to help. The debate continued for hours. Daewon stood on the platform answering questions, defending humanity, explaining his progress with the language. He was exhausted. He wanted to return to the library to continue studying. Every minute spent here was a minute wasted. Finally, Praxis called for a vote. The council would decide whether to support Daewon's mission or to quarantine humanity until the crisis passed. The vote was close, frighteningly close. But in the end, the council agreed to give Daewon his chance. After the meeting, Daewon found Young-Soo waiting for him in a quiet corridor. The old historian smiled sadly. You spoke well in there, Young-Soo said. But I need to tell you something. Something I discovered years ago but could not prove until now. What is it? The predecessors are not entirely gone. They transcended to a higher dimension, a place beyond normal space and time. They did not die. They simply moved to a place where they could not interfere with the species they created. Why would they do that? Kyungmi asked. Because they made a mistake, Young-soo said. The predecessors were divided into factions. They fought among themselves, wasted their strength on internal conflicts. That division made them vulnerable to the devourers. So when they created new species, they tried to build unity into them. But they knew they could not force unity. It had to develop naturally. Daewon understood. That is why they created humans to be diverse. Different languages, different cultures, different ways of thinking. They wanted us to learn to work together despite our differences. Exactly, Young-soo said. And that is what you must do now. The predecessor language is not meant to be spoken by one voice. It requires multiple voices, multiple perspectives working in harmony. A chill ran down Daewon's spine. But I have been studying alone. I know, Young-soo said. That is why I came. You cannot do this by yourself. Back at his apartment, Daewon sat in darkness. Young-soo's words echoed in his mind. Multiple voices. Multiple perspectives. He had been so focused on learning the language himself that he never considered he might need help. Nira visited him the next day. Her skin was a worried purple color. I need to tell you something, she said. When you speak the predecessor language, I sense changes in you. The language affects your mind, reshapes your thoughts. If you speak too much of it, you may lose yourself. What do you mean? The predecessor language operates on multiple levels, Nira explained. It is not just words. It manipulates reality itself. Speaking it changes the speaker, makes them more like the predecessors. If you speak the entire ritual alone, you may become something no longer human. Daewon thought about this for a long time. To save the galaxy, he might have to sacrifice his humanity. Was he willing to pay that price? Kyungmi found him on the roof of his building, staring at the stars. She sat beside him without speaking. They had been friends for 15 years. They had worked together, argued together, laughed together. She knew what he was thinking without him saying a word. I am scared, Daewon finally said. I know. What if I fail? What if I speak the ritual and nothing happens? What if the devourers escape and everything ends? Then we tried, Kyungmi said. That is all anyone can do, try. Jae-hyun contacted them a week later. He had been working with Earth's military, preparing a fleet to support the mission. We are ready, he said. 50 ships from Earth, another 100 from allied species. If language fails, we will fight. Fighting will not stop the devourers, Daewon said. The predecessors tried that. They had weapons far beyond ours and they barely won. I know, Jae-hyun said. But we will not go down without a fight. That is the human way. 2 months remained. Daewon returned to the library accompanied by Kyungmi, Young-soo, and a team of linguists from Earth. They studied the crystals together, sharing knowledge, comparing notes. Slowly, the predecessor language began to make more sense, but Daewon could feel the changes Nira warned about. The more he spoke the language, the more distant human concepts seemed. Love, fear, hope, anger, these emotions felt thin like echoes from another life. He was becoming something else. Something cold and logical and inhuman. One night he dreamed of the predecessors. They were tall beings with too many limbs and eyes that saw in dimensions humans could not perceive. They spoke to him in their ancient language, telling him secrets about the universe. When he woke, he could not remember what they said. But he felt different, changed. Kyungmi noticed. We need to be careful, she said. The language is transforming you. I know, Daewon said, but I do not know how to stop it. Young-soo had an idea. You need anchors, things that keep you connected to your humanity, people who can remind you who you are. So Daewon surrounded himself with friends. Boram visited regularly, telling him about politics and gossip. Sun-hee called from her ship, sharing stories about her crew. Hwan sent funny messages about his research. They kept him grounded, kept him human. 1 month remained. The Galactic Council prepared for the worst. Evacuation plans were made. Defense fleets assembled. But everyone knew it would not be enough. If the devourers escaped, the galaxy would fall. Daewon had learned enough of the language now. Not all of it, perhaps not even most of it, but enough to try. The question was whether enough would be sufficient to renew the seal and save everything. The threshold station floated at the edge of reality itself. It was the last thing the predecessors built before they transcended. A massive structure surrounding a tear in space-time. Through the shimmering barrier, Daewon could see writhing shadows that hurt his eyes to look at. The Devourers pressing against their prison, testing the walls that held them. The combined fleet had arrived 3 days ago. 150 ships from dozens of species, all gathered to witness either salvation or destruction. Daewon stood on the station's observation deck, watching the ships move through space. So many beings all depending on him. Kyungmi stood beside him. She had barely left his side during the journey. The scans show the barrier is failing faster than predicted, she said quietly. We have days, not weeks. I know. Daewon could feel it. The predecessor language had changed him enough that he could sense the barrier weakening. It was like hearing a crystal crack, slow and inevitable. Young-Soo arrived with a team of linguists. They carried portable displays showing the ritual Daewon would need to perform. The ritual was long and complex, requiring perfect pronunciation of words that existed in multiple dimensions at once. One mistake could collapse the entire thing. I have been studying the ritual structure, Young-Soo said. I believe I was right. The ritual requires multiple voices, not just one. But who else can speak it? Daewon asked. I am the only one who has learned the language. You have learned the most, Young-Soo corrected. But others have learned fragments. Kyungmi knows some phrases. Boram studied the diplomatic sections. Hwan understands the biological terminology. Separately, you cannot complete the ritual. But together, Daewon felt hope stir in his chest for the first time in weeks. Together we might succeed. Velthar and Raxus joined them. The insectoid archaeologist looked humbled now, his earlier arrogance gone. The predecessors knew this would require cooperation, Velthar said. That is why they created so many different species. They wanted diverse perspectives working together. But will it be enough? Raxus asked. Its crystalline body reflected the dim light nervously. The ritual is designed for beings who understand multiple dimensions. Humans are three-dimensional creatures. Humans are more than that, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a hologram appear in the center of the deck. It was tall and strange, with too many limbs and eyes that shifted through colors that should not exist. This was a predecessor, or at least a recording of one. I am the voice, the hologram said. I was left here to guide those who came to renew the seal. I have waited 3 million years. It is good to finally speak again. Daewon approached the hologram carefully. Can you help us? Can you teach us the ritual? I can guide you, the voice said. But I cannot do it for you. The ritual must be performed by living beings who understand the cost of failure. The predecessors learned this lesson too late. We became so advanced, so powerful, that we forgot what it meant to struggle, to fear, to hope. That disconnection made us vulnerable to the Devourers. What are the Devourers? Kyungmi asked. They are hunger given form, the voice replied. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, consuming energy and matter. They do not think as you understand thinking. They simply consume. The predecessors fought them for centuries before finding a way to trap them, but the trap was never permanent. It requires renewal. Why did you not renew it yourselves? Velthar asked. We tried, the voice said, but we had become too unified in our thinking. We had eliminated diversity in pursuit of efficiency. The ritual requires multiple perspectives, multiple ways of understanding reality. We no longer had that. So we transcended to a higher dimension and seeded new species who would have the diversity we lost. Daewon understood now. The predecessors had not created humanity out of arrogance or cruelty. They created humanity out of desperation, knowing they themselves had failed. How many voices do we need? He asked. As many as possible, the voice replied. The ritual strengthens with each new perspective added. 1 voice might hold the barrier for years. 10 voices might hold it for centuries. 100 voices might hold it forever. Jaehyun had been listening from the doorway. He stepped forward now. Then we will provide those voices. I will ask for volunteers from every species represented in the fleet. Within hours, volunteers gathered on the station. Humans came first. Boram, Hwan, Sunhee, and dozens of linguists who had studied the predecessor language. But others came too. Velthar volunteered, despite knowing he could barely speak a few words. Raxus offered its crystalline voice. Nira came, her skin shifting through worried colors. Tavrim brought his security team. We may not understand your words, the reptilian said, but we will add our voices to yours. The voice examined each volunteer, its impossible eyes seeing things beyond normal perception. Many of you cannot speak the predecessor language, it observed. You will not understand the words you say. Then teach us what to say, Boram replied. We will say it even if we do not understand. That is courage, the voice said. That is precisely what the predecessors lost. The ritual would take place at the focal point, a chamber at the station's center where the barrier was thinnest. The chamber was circular, with a raised platform in the middle. Day one would stand on that platform, speaking the primary ritual. The others would surround him, adding their voices when needed. The voice taught them through the night. It broke the ritual into sections, assigning different parts to different volunteers. Some sections were in pure predecessor language. Others mixed in words from the volunteers' native tongues. The ritual was becoming something new, something the predecessors never intended. It was becoming a hybrid, just like humanity itself. When dawn came, measured by the station's internal clock, since they were too far from any star to see real dawn, they were ready. Or as ready as they could be. The volunteers gathered in the focal chamber. Day one stood on the central platform, the main crystal from the library in his hands. Around him, 93 beings from 27 different species waited. Their voices would join his, creating a chorus that spanned the galaxy's diversity. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they could see the barrier. It flickered now like a dying light. The shadows beyond it moved with hungry anticipation. It is time, the voice said. Dewan began to speak. The predecessor language flowed from his mouth, words that existed in multiple dimensions at once. As he spoke, he felt his consciousness expanding, touching concepts that no three-dimensional being should comprehend. He saw space folding, time branching, reality bending. The language tried to change him, to make him something inhuman. But then Kyungmi spoke, adding her voice to his. She spoke in Korean mixed with predecessor words, anchoring him to his humanity. Boram joined next, then Hwan, then Sun-hee. Human voices speaking human languages mixed with words from a dead civilization. But it was not enough. The barrier continued to flicker. Then Velthar spoke. His words were clumsy, barely understandable, but they added a new perspective. The ritual strengthened. Raxus followed, its crystalline voice adding harmonics that resonated through dimensions. Nira sang in her species' ancient tongue. Adding emotional depth one by one, the volunteers added their voices. Some spoke languages that had been dead for thousands of years. Others spoke languages that would not be invented for thousands of years to come. The ritual did not care. It took all perspectives, all voices, and wove them together. Day one felt the change happening. Not just to him, but to everyone in the chamber. They were becoming connected, linked through the ritual into a single purpose. But unlike the predecessors, they maintained their individual perspectives. They were unified without becoming uniform. The barrier began to glow brighter. The shadows beyond it retreated, howling in frustration. The devourers could not break through. Not against this many voices, this much diversity, but the effort was exhausting. Daewon felt his strength failing. His vision blurred. He could not maintain the ritual much longer. Then Young-Soo spoke. The old historian's voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it carried weight. Remember who you are, he said in Korean. Remember why you are here. Remember what you are protecting. Those simple words, spoken in a language the ritual should not accept, became the foundation. Daewon found his center again. He was human. He was a linguist who loved dead languages. He was a friend, a son, a person who ate too much spicy food and stayed up too late reading. The predecessor language could change his mind, but it could not erase his soul. Not as long as he remembered. The ritual reached its climax. Every voice spoke as one, creating a sound that was not really sound but something deeper. Reality itself responded. The barrier blazed with light so bright it hurt to see. The shadows beyond it shrieked and fled into the deepest parts of their prison. And then it was over. Day one collapsed. Kyungmi caught him before he fell. Around them, other volunteers were collapsing too, exhausted by the effort. But they were alive. And more importantly, the barrier held. Not the old barrier, weak and failing. This was new, stronger, woven from dozens of perspectives instead of one. The voice appeared before them, its hologram flickering. You have done what the predecessors could not, it said. You have created a barrier that strengthens with diversity instead of weakening with it.